Hello, I'm Talisman Skulls. This is part 2 on Sidutru, and this is the theology aspect. It's going to be very short and to the point, so I'm going to clear a few things up right off the bat, since there's a limitation for only 15 minutes on these videos right now. Okay, the first thing is people compare Warloga to Dharma, and while there are similarities, there are some distinctions. But we can at least be open to accept that there are more things that are mutually compatible there, since it has the same concepts of laws, the ways of things. Weirda is similar to karma, minus the reward and punishment bit. It tends to be more of a specific Indian philosophy with a lot of different angles. And while there's a lot of similarities, that karma thing tends to be a little bit more fatalistic and reward and punishment based, which Weirda isn't exactly like that at all. It's more circumstantial. And it shapes things, but it doesn't necessarily dictate things. Okay? I hope that's helpful to understand. And Wejas, person said that's something like prana, and I told him it's more like along the lines of the Polynesian mana. And they're like, oh, okay. And when they looked it up, they're like, I get you. And some sites actually comment and agree with that. But the problem is that so many of these so-called neo-pagan and heathen movements, they get it wrong. They don't understand what these things really mean. And they really do try. So I'm not going to insult them. They really do try. But if you don't truly understand the frame in which things are meant, you are going to mislead yourself and mislead others. So you need to be more careful with that. But we can all actually benefit from one another if we stop looking at things as something separate and start looking at the actual roots, and then we'll have something solid and worth sharing with one another and others that don't understand it. But if you don't understand something clearly and fully yourself, you really shouldn't have discussions about it and try to claim things with certainty when you know yourself you're really not that simple. So, anyway. The other factor is, as I mentioned before, we are predominantly quadrotheistic, which is still polytheism, because we recognize at the top of the pantheon a family of 4. And while this is very hard for most people to accept because they think, this is automatically a license for polygamy or something like that, it's really not. And it's not against it, it's not for it, it's just the way things are. And from that perspective, you have to understand that to be a Sidutru, you have to understand you can't put yourself on that status because God and the 3 goddesses are beyond us. We respect them, but we also know they're not up our ass trying to, fine-tooth comb and find every single little fraction and trying to denounce some kind of perfectionist fantasy and fallacy and this big, mean, judgmental thing that claims to be all loving on one hand and then ready to send you into an eternal pit of damnation. It's just not how it works within Sidutru or those 3 principles. It's incompatible. And that's one of the reasons why these 3 principles were distorted, because they're not compatible with claims of salvation, because there's a lot more expectation of responsibility for community as well as yourself. It's not just self-actualization and self-responsibility, it's responsibility for one another. That's a major difference. No one person saves everyone. We all either save or destroy each other. It's a collective thing. But in that same collective, we still have our individuality, and that should be respected. And we don't have to be tolerant of stuff that we know is wrong, but we can respect the rights of others that have their own views. So there's no persecution complex within Sidutru. We just don't go for it. But anyway, so yeah, there's one god, three goddesses in the story. There's no mix and match. It's not compatible with a lot of stuff that's out there. And it is actually a historically based foundation, and it lines up exactly with the three principles. The other part is the innumerable spirits. They're too diverse to be pigeonholed into a single category, or a limited category of maybe 3 or 4 or 8 or 10 different types. Because not all these beings are necessarily aware or intelligent in the human sense. They are as specialized as any creature in nature, and most of them are from creatures in the physical nature as well as the non-physical nature. The other difference for us here in our theology is that spiritual beings, they don't show up and perform tricks for people. It's a reciprocal relationship. You either have a connection with them or you don't. It's just that simple. And so if you don't have a connection, of course you're not going to experience it for the most part. And you might run into a couple of nasty ones in like a haunted house or some shit, but most cases what people think are haunted houses is just fucking houses settling. So there's really not much superstition within Sidutru either. In other words, just because we hear something go thump, we're going to kind of like look around and see if the window's open and the door's shut or something. We're not paranoid, we're not jumping, it doesn't work that way. Do we think that our clergy are superior to everyone else? No. Clergy gain their respect by the clarity of their teachings and being straight to the point. And if you actually understand your culture and theology that you are drawing from, then it's going to be a lot easier to explain it in simple terms for everyone else. Those who can't explain it are one of two things. They either really don't know what they're talking about, or they're lying. And that's as in deceit. And that's just something we can't not accept. And that's one of the reasons why Sidutru is in clash with a lot of the groups that go around and call themselves Wiccans or heathens or pagans, mainly because of that, and also because of the fact that our ancestors did not call themselves that. And for people to go around and call themselves things that our ancestors got pissed off about being called and knew it was an insult, you can't claim that and try to polish a turd, fill it with sand, and call it sandalwood. It just doesn't work. Our culture and spirituality is contemplative. It's not doctrinal in the usual sense. We also don't believe that spirituality belongs to anyone. It's open to everyone. And everybody has a right to approach it as they will, but they have to approach it knowledgeably, rationally, and critically. Because if you go half-cocked with the whole, well, I'm just going to keep an open mind and just accept everything as being true and make it however I want to, is not the way to be. That's very immature, it's very dangerous, and it's also very stupid. And you can't fill in the gaps with a bunch of occult stuff. And Sidutru is not a secrecy-based anything like most of these others are. And it's not founded in anything remotely with white supremacy or whatever. There's a reason why we sometimes refer to Sidutru as having Euro-Asian, North African roots, is because we recognize that people were interacting and exchanging and learning from each other all over the fucking world back then, and well up into the, well into the 1100s, frankly, and it's just, the rest is politics that tore it all apart and confused most of it. But we don't need to pollute it with out-of-date politics from the 70s or slightly before or a while back. It's irrelevant. In any case, that's pretty much how it goes. There's one god and three goddesses. They have many names, and that's how you connect, is understanding what the meaning of the names are, and I'll be expanding on that here in the next video, since I have limited time on these. There's really not much else you can really say about it that you shouldn't already be able to figure out just as a, oh, okay, it makes sense, and keep it simple. In this particular thing, it really is the KISS scenario, keep it simple, stupid. Alright? Now, the other thing is, just because there are archaic words that help clarify those things, we don't need to go back and drag up all of it, because there's a lot of things that just aren't worth trying to resurrect. Okay, like the thrall system. No, that's just slavery. It's just another word for slave. And that's not cool. And anybody who tries to preach that, they are fucked up in the head. Anybody who thinks it as a race thing only are an idiot and try to whitewash things to suit their own romanticist, twisted agendas, and we just can't accept that. So anyway, that's really the base foundation. The term way has been used to mean fae and they. So when you see somebody referred to such as Vanir, Vater, or fays and fairies, that's really the truth. It means beings, the ultimate essence. And there are many different forms of those, which include ancestors, which includes creatures from nature. And there used to be a lot of different words to describe the different types, like Asa, which became Asia, actually means hours in the plural, and was a term for ancestor from the Latin antecedere. And elf actually comes from Alf, which comes from Ulf, which is the same root of the word wolf, and means hunters. So you have the spirit of hunters. Not necessarily always applicable to your concept of the modern wolf, but the wolf was certainly a totem of hunters even then in the European cultures as much as others. But there were also other type of animals that were considered totems for hunters, which also included warriors, like bears and wild boar and things like that. They were totemic. So there you go. On to part 3.